Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome to the course code Eng455, lecture number 25. Today we are going to start within the linguistics an important area, that is of historical linguistics. So far we have studied a lot about linguistics in relation to language, development of language, the language acquisition, learning, brain and language, and grammatical aspects of language, yes, and from syntax to the phoneme, the phonetics. We have discussed in detail the different aspects of language, the different levels of language. But now within linguistics it's important to also study the history of linguistics. I deliberately left it over there, instead of teaching these historical linguistics in very beginning of the lectures, then focusing now, because I believe that it's better to understand that it was more important to understand what linguistics is all about. Now we are focusing our attention on actually the history of linguistics. We will get a brief introduction about the different linguists who worked to establish the linguistics as a separate discipline or a separate field of knowledge. And we will, with our first lecture on historical linguistics, we will be more concerned with Ferdinand de Saussure. But before that, let's see what is our today's focus. Today we will talk about history of linguistics, that how the linguistics it was established as a different discipline, what are the factors which played their important role in establishing it as a discipline. Then we will talk about, I will mention some important major schools of thought in linguistics, because from the first era of linguistics till now we have different schools of thought within linguistics who emerged and made their contribution to the field of linguistics. Then our major focus would be on the first school of linguistics, that is structuralism, and in structuralism with respect to Ferdinand de Saussure, the pioneer of structuralism and as well as the pioneer of linguistics, and how his work it inspired the structuralism in America. So this would be the focus of our lecture today. Let me give you a brief introduction about history of linguistics, the prelude time before linguistics, when the study of language, it was a discipline, but the study of language, the way linguistics is concerned with, was not there. So that prelude is 19th century era, dominated by philology and comparative philology and traditional grammar approach. If you remember the very first lecture on linguistics, I gave you detail that how the modern linguistics, how it is different from traditional grammar approach, how it is different from philology and comparative philology. The basic thing is that before the linguistics and during the 19th century beginning, the study of language was already a discipline. So the study of language was not a new thing, but again the way it was studied, the way the language was focused and studied and analyzed, that is quite different from the way the linguistics does it. And that was the big, that's why we can say that linguistics is different from these traditional approaches and from these traditional studies of language. Again, in both areas the major focus of study was language, but the traditional linguistics or the philology or the comparative philology, they approach toward the language as a describable entity. They used to describe language in certain, with respect to their rules and regulations. They described it, they compared it with different languages, and they made they made certain rules to check the validity or logicalness or complexity of a language. So these were things were there. So and more important, the diachronic approach towards the study of language, it was adopted. The diachronic approach, what it is meant, that the study of language over a period of time. They used to compare that how the language it evolved from one period to another period of time, what the changes, and trace those changes. And their basic concern with the language was regarding to these areas. I mean, about the history of language, about the origin of language, about the prescription of the language as an entity that could be described, with whom you can make certain rules and you can describe it in such way. That was the prelude a time before the linguistics or modern linguistics. But then the linguistics, it emerged. Actually, what happened, how this modern linguistics it evolved, is that a certain linguist, they came and they shifted their attention from the diachronic study of language, from the way it was studied by the traditional grammarians or the philologists. They shifted their attention towards the different areas of language, and they shifted their attention from historic and descriptive study of language to scientific study of language. Remember, linguistics is scientific study of language. So the major change, the major shift from prelude to modern linguistic was the scientific study. Before that, the language was not considered as something scientific phenomena or as something the scientific, and the process used to study language was not at all scientific. But with the modern linguistics, the approach became scientific. They considered language as something which could be studied and observed with respect to scientific procedures, the systematic scientific procedures of observation, making hypotheses, testing hypotheses, creating theories regarding the language on the basis of these observations or all experimentation even. So the scientific study, the scientific thing was introduced. Another one important thing, that they considered language not as a describable entity, but according to these modern linguistics, language is itself a system. It is itself a complete system to study. We cannot study language from different angles or by comparing it with different other things. Rather, language itself is a system to study about. Then another major shift was from diachronic approach to synchronic approach. Diachronic, the language, the study of language over a period of time, and synchronic approach, the study of language over at a point in time. Instead of comparing it, they used to study, okay, at this particular period of time, what kind of language was there, instead of comparing it over here and there. So this way, they adopted the synchronic approach, and the most important thing, the modern linguistics emerged with structuralism. The structuralism, the first approach towards the study of language in modern linguistics, the first school of thought that emerged in some around end of 19th century or 20th century. Basically it was 20th century. So during the 20th century, a school of thought emerged who considered and studied language as some way differently from all the traditional views and methods. And that first school of thought is known as structuralism. And this structuralist approach towards the language changed the whole course of discipline, this discipline related to study of language. So from structuralism we can say that actually the modern linguistics begin. So if we are concerned with how this modern linguistic studies it started, and we trace the history of this linguistics, actually the structuralism, from structuralism the study of modern linguistics emerged. But at the same time, I would like to mention some major schools of thought inside the linguistics. Definitely a big yes was structuralism, it emerged as the first school of thought in linguistics. But at the same time, we cannot say that it was the only school of thought that laid basis for this modern linguistic. After structuralism, we had so many other offshoots of the structuralism, as well as certain schools of thought in linguistics which were in contrast in their views again with the structuralism, like the functionalism, like generative linguistics, the Prague school and the London school. These were some major schools of thought which contributed towards the study of linguistics, modern linguistics, which made these schools, they made their own contributions. They defined language in different ways, they studied different aspects of language, and each of these schools of thought made a contribution in language learning, or in some way. For example, the Prague school can be considered as the one who founded this phonology element of language. Before that, phonology was not a separate discipline in linguistics, but they introduced it. So, and structuralism, the pioneer of modern linguistics. So, all of these schools of thought, they contributed in some way or the other way to make major contributions in the field of linguistics. And with all these schools of thought, we have some names associated with them, some major linguist names who are associated with these, particularly associated with one or two schools of thought. Like if the Ferdinand de Saussure is the father of structuralism, then the structuralism, the study of structuralism in America was conducted by Bloomfield and Edward Sapir, Boas and Boff, and so many other linguists. Then functionalism, famous with the name of Mac Halliday, generative linguistics with such a big name of Noam Chomsky, and the Prague school with Tabascoy and the Jacobson, the important names in Prague school. And with respect to the London school, there are like some recent branches of linguistics, as well as sometimes this functional linguistics is considered as a part of the London school. Again, the Mac Halliday name and some other big names are there. So these people, these schools of thought, they made major contributions in the study of linguistics. And inshallah, while studying the history of linguistics, we will be focusing these, the major names in these schools of linguistics with some details as well. But today's major focus is with the beginning of modern linguistics, with the beginning of structuralism, and the name we have, the biggest name in the linguist discipline, that is Ferdinand de Saussure. And in the Ferdinand de Saussure, who laid basis for the structuralism. Now, but what structuralism was? The structuralism, as the name makes it clear, focuses on language structure, the form aspect of the language. And structural linguistics is based on the idea that language is itself a self-regulating and self-contained system. This idea was actually the contrasting idea of modern linguistics from all the traditional approaches towards the study of language. Before that, language was considered not as a complete system, rather it was studied in relation to other disciplines. But over here, these linguists, this structuralist approach, it proposed, no, language is itself a complete system. You need to study language as itself to study all about language. Pioneer, as I've mentioned, Ferdinand de Saussure, with his book A Course in General Linguistics, the famous book, the first book on linguistics, which laid basis of modern linguistics. So again, what is our major focus today? Ferdinand de Saussure. Age, the lifespan 1857 and died in 1913, known as father of modern linguistics. Yes, by the majority of the books, Ferdinand de Saussure is entitled as the father of modern linguistics, and it is said that he was the first one who laid basis for the study of language as a separate discipline from the traditional approaches. And that's why and especially with reference to his books, A Course in General Linguistics, his contributions to the field of linguistics, he was regarded, he was given the title of father of linguistics. Now, before, what were his major contributions with respect to structuralism? What are the ideas which laid basis for structuralism? Before that, let's get introduction, a brief life introduction about the life history of this Ferdinand de Saussure. Ferdinand de Saussure, born 26th November 1857. French origin, means he was born in a French country, but later on he moved to Geneva from a family of many scholars. The family to which he belonged was already known as a family of scholars. Many big names related to different fields of knowledge, they were in his family. And as in the beginning part of his, in the major part, the early years of his life, he studied many languages such as Latin, Greek, chemistry, theology, and law at University of Geneva. When he continued his study at Geneva, he studied these major subjects. And look at his study with respect to the languages Latin and Greek, and again the subject combination, chemistry, theology, and law, the wide variety of the subjects he studied, and that's why he came up with the different ideas, because he was with having knowledge regarding so many varied subjects, which are not even related. At age 21, wrote Memoires sur le système primitive des voix la langue indo-europeenne, a book entitled in French. The words I am reading, they are in French. He wrote this book in French, and in this very first book, which was basically about the Indo-European language, he came up with certain theories which proved several scholars wrong. So right at the age of 21, he was the center of attention. He became the center of attention. The way he criticized the ideas of many scholars regarding these Indo-European languages and their beliefs. In 1880, he was awarded the doctorate PhD degree from the University of Leipzig, Germany. Then he started teaching at Paris. He started his career as a lecturer at the university in Paris. 1891, he returned to Geneva to teach there. In the beginning of his career from Paris, and then later on to Geneva. And what he taught at Geneva University was that he taught ancient Sanskrit for 21 years, and that's why his attention towards the language was diverted, because 21 long years, long lifespan that he devoted to the study and teaching of the ancient language, that is a Greek. And later on he was asked to teach a course in general linguistics, and from 1907 to 1911 he taught this course of general linguistics at University of Geneva. Almost 3 times he taught this course, 2-3 classes. And while working, he influenced many different linguists, but also other disciplines. When he was teaching, when he was studying, he did not only talk about only a specific a subject of linguistics. Rather, he was interested in different branches of knowledge, and he made contributions even in anthropology, in psychiatry, and literary criticism. His theories, his ideas, they laid bases. Important aspects of knowledge were introduced in the different areas of knowledge. Died in 1931, 1913, and got popularity after his death. Actually, after his death, he was known as the father of linguistics. What was the reason? Actually, as I told you, that for the 3 years he taught a course in general linguistics, and he did not publish any book on the linguistics. But after his death, his 3 students who kept on taking the notes in his class, they collected all the notes, and they collected all these things, and they published it together and as a book form entitled as A Course in General Linguistics. and this book was a revolutionary book, considered revolutionary on the field about the knowledge of linguistics. And with the popularity of that book, with the ideas which were mentioned in that book, which were presented in that that collection of notes, they laid a basis for another very important school of thought known as Structuralism. And for this book, the Saussure, he was entitled as father of modern linguistics, because the many ideas were there in this book which were never considered, or which were never taken with respect to discipline of linguistics. Now, what were the ideas? I'm not concerned about all the Saussure's ideas about different fields of knowledge. Rather, the ideas presented regarding the linguistics in his book, A Course in General Linguistics. So I will present some of his major ideas that are considered the foundation principles of this structuralism. Idea number 1, the subject matter of linguistics is human speech. As I told you that before this linguistics, before Saussure, the language was studied in respect to different other things, and in relation to different other disciplines. But according to Saussure, the scope, what we should study in linguistics are not the other thing. Rather, the human speech itself is a scope of linguistics. The subject matter should be the human speech, not the things that are associated with human speech. So it is because human speech is itself a complete system of study with respect to linguistics. So the object of linguistics is language. Language which is itself a system. No need to go here and there to relate this language as a system, as a part of different other systems. Rather, language itself is a complete system. So the concern of linguistics is to study the language as a system, as a complete system. Now, what were his arguments for these points? According to him, language is different from speech, speaking and writing. Now, another important contribution. According to him, the language is something different from speech. What is that? Speech, oral production of language. Speaking, again related to oral production, and writing, whatever we write. So these speech, this speaking and these writing, these are the three ways to manifest language. These are the three ways to study language. Language is not that only something that is spoken, or language is not something that is in written form, or language is not something that is in sign form. All these different things, they together form a language, and language is different from all these things. Now, language, that an important term he used to describe language is langue, a French word for language, langue, L-A-N-G-U-E. You have often heard this langue and parole interrelation or the differences. So language, he called the langue, is though a part of system that is human speech. What is the basic, the major system is human speech. That is the study, that is the concern of linguistics, all the human speech. And inside that human speech, language is only a part of that system. And language is what is langue, your knowledge about language. Then that language is the whole thing, human speech. Langue, that is that we call a language, is part of that whole system. But at the same time, it is itself a system. Language is not only a part of the whole human speech, but itself at the same time, it is a system. Language is different from speech. Now let me give you an interesting example. Our whole body, it is made up of several systems. Our body is a combination of systems like circulatory system, digestive system, excretory system, nervous system, skeleton system. These all systems are there. So our body is comprised of several systems. But at the same time, every system is itself a system. For example, if I talk about a circulatory system is comprised of the heart and the veins and the arteries and the blood vessels, and it is not part of the human body as a whole system, but at the same time that is itself a system. That heart, the veins, the arteries, the blood vessels, they together make a system. So similarly, the human speech is a whole system, just like the consider it a body. And language is a part of that body, but at the same time, just like a circulatory or a digestive system, it itself is a system. So this is the way you can consider language as a system, as a focus of linguistics. And if it is a part of system, it is at the same time different from speech. For example, if it is the whole body system and the circulatory system or my nervous system is the part of that system, so we cannot say that nervous system is a body system. Nervous system is, yes, it is a part of that body system, but at the same time it is a different from that body system. Similarly, language is a part of human speech, but at the same time different from it, and at the same time it itself is a complete system. Now he further gives how to make that difference clear, to make language different from speech. The Ferdinand de Saussure, he presented his own ideas. According to him, the human speech involves three types of actions: psychological, physical, and physiological. Now what is meant by these? Psychological phenomena of speech involve the understanding of speech with respect to our brain, how we understand language, and that is totally a psychological phenomena. So human speech at one place, it is a psychological aspect where it is related to brain. Language and brain, it is all about psychology. At the same time, language is a physiological phenomena. How the different humans' body organs, they are involved in the production and reception of sound. So these are the physiological features. So you see that speech is such a big thing. It involves psychology, it involves physiological, and at the third level it is a physical phenomenon. How? When I speak, my sound reaches to you, and how this sound reaches to you? In the form of sound waves, and that sound waves are something physical. They are not related to your body, they are not related to your brain. They are sound waves. They have physical existence, and they travel in the form of waves from the one body to another body. So again, see, the speech is involving the physiological features, the psychological features, and at the same time the physical phenomena. Now language is not all these things. Now human speech is such a big thing, but language is not all these things. Language means certain your information about certain knowledge and the ability to produce that language. Language is actually homogeneous in nature. Language is one thing, whereas this human speech is a heterogeneous. Heterogeneous, you know, the different varieties, physiological, psychological, and physical varieties. So it is a heterogeneous thing, whereas language is a homogeneous thing. So language is different from human speech. Language is concerned of linguistics. Language is itself a system. These are the ideas about the nature of language by Saussure. Over here inside the language, he further gives two categories. These ideas are known as langue versus parole. Now according to Saussure, this language is comprised of the two things. That means when we have a language, we have two things. We have langue, we have parole. The langue is the knowledge about language. For example, any understanding that you, any knowledge about it is just like the competence versus performance of Chomsky idea. So similarly, langue is your knowledge about language, and parole is actually the use of that language. So you can say that parole is a living language because it is concerned with the way you use language. It is concerned with the individual persons, that about how they act with respect to speech, and it is about the way language is employed in actual speech. So parole is the actual use of language, and Langue is actually the knowledge of language, the shared system of language in a society. It is about the formal structure of language. For example, if I have learned English language, I have knowledge about the structures of English language, the word order of language, the vocabulary of English language. That is my knowledge about English language. That is my Langue. But when I use that language to communicate with people, that is parole, the actual speech of that language. So this way, language itself is a system comprised of Langue and parole. And when you have Langue, and both things are interrelated, you have Langue, then you have the ability for the parole. Because if you do not have the information or the knowledge about a language, you cannot use it in actual situation. Now, language is itself a system. So what further this system is all about? That is another important, very well known idea about by Saussure about the nature of language. Language is a system of sign. What is a sign? According to Saussure, page 65, a course in general linguistics, language is a process of naming. But this does not mean that ready-made ideas exist before words, but rather the linguistic sign unites not a thing and a name, but a concept and a sound image. Page 66 from his book Course in General Linguistics. These words of Saussure provided an idea that language is a system of signs. Do you getting this thing? If not, let me explain what is meant by this word sign. What Saussure says about this word sign. Now look at this thing. According to Saussure, the linguistic sign is actually equal to signified plus signifier. Now what is signifier and signified? The signifier is the mental impression of sound image. For example, when you hear a word tree, now for the word tree you have a mental representation in your mind, T-R-E-E, tree. This is, if you hear that word tree, you have a mental representation of alphabets for that or the sounds that compose this word tree. And because of that signifier, you can write the spellings of tree, T-R-E-E, tree. This is the mental impression of sound image. But at the same time, we have signified the concept of tree. What is the concept of tree? Think about, when I say a word tree, you do not get the only that mental impression of the word T-R-E-E, tree, but at the same time, you get a mental picture of that tree, what the tree is. The tree is something that is not a chair, the tree is something that is not a door, the tree is not something that is a window. Tree mean for the word tree, you have a mental picture. You know what a tree is because you have already seen a tree, and you have a picture of that tree in your mind. That picture of the object is the signified, and the name of that object, the words, the sound impression that it creates is signifier. And linguistic sign is equal to signifier plus signified. So you can divide this sign, linguistic sign, the word used by Saussure, into two areas. If you look at this picture, it is making it clear that the whole thing is a sign, linguistic sign. And in this whole sign, linguistic sign, we have the concept, we have the sound image. A sign is composed of concept plus sound image. Concept is signified and the sound image is signifier. So what do you get? Sign is equal to signifier plus signified. Now let me make it clear with the help of example. If you look at this example, signifier, the word roses, for roses. Now the signifier is that for the word roses, when I say roses, you automatically know what is the spelling of roses, R-O-S-E-S. You get that sound image of the word roses. But at the same time, you have certain concept with roses. You know, the roses, especially the red roses, they are associated with something, feelings. Roses, definitely they mean something. The roses that you have seen, the actual flowers, that is one thing. But at the same time, with the word roses, you have certain concepts, like your feelings, like your passions. So you can call it a signified. So what would be the sign? The passion-fied roses. With that idea of roses, you have feelings associated with it. You have passions associated with it. Try to think about the red roses. The idea of love, the idea of relationship, the idea of closeness, the feelings, they emerge. So this way, the concepts and the images, they are interrelated. And the sign is always equal to signifier plus a signified. Let's see some more examples. Look at this picture of tree. When I say word tree, do you get this picture of tree? Definitely some like this, not exactly this picture, but some picture of tree in your mind. What is that picture? The concept of word tree. Signified. Concept is signified. The word tree, T-R-E-E, tree that I say is signifier, and your idea of tree, and please, that idea of tree is not without that concept. If I say a word tree and you do not know what is the thing tree is, it means you do not have any mental picture of the thing tree. You have never seen a tree. You are not going to get my word. So how my meaning would get clear? When you have that concept in your mind as well. When you have seen a tree. For example, I say a word dog. If you are not familiar with the word dog, in English, maybe you are familiar in Urdu with kutta word, but not in English, or in German you are familiar with the word dog, Hund, but not in English it is the word dog and you are not at all familiar. So when I say the word dog, no mental picture is there in your brain. So you get confused. What is this thing dog? What is meant by the dog? But if you know what dog is, then with my word dog, you will automatically get a mental picture of dog in your brain, what the dog is. So that mental picture signified plus the word dog, signifier, together it makes a linguistic sign. And when these two things are there, then you are able to understand the language, the words in the language. Now Saussure further says that the relationship between signifier and signified is arbitrary. Arbitrary means based on conventions, no natural resemblance. I do not say a thing like this, a tree. Look at this picture. I do not say this thing, a tree, because there is some relationship between the word tree and this object tree. No, not at all. I do not say a dog because there is some connection between the word dog and the actual dog. If there would be any connection, then the same word dog should be used to present that idea of dog in all languages of the world. But this does not happen. For example, in German for the word dog we have word Hund. In Urdu we have word kutta. In English we have word dog. So the signified is same, but in every language signifier changes. In every language there is a different word for that. So you cannot say that the word or the signifier it has a direct relationship with this signified. For example, this word tree, Urdu, not tree, dracht. Now in another language another word would be used. So in every language there would be a different word for this single thin tree, for this single image. So it means that the signifier and signified, they do not have any arbitrary relationship, because the reason is that in every language for the same object we have different word. So we cannot say that okay, this word for this thing, this word is fixed. There is a arbitrariness, there is a arbitrary relationship between the signifier and signified. then this concept of signified and signified, if it is based on conventions, then according to Saussure, another important thing, that according to Saussure, if we divide this signifier and signified into two, then we can divide them into two planes. One is the plane of thought and one is the plane of sound. The plane of sound, where I actually pronounce this word, tree, dog, man, door, the actual pronunciation is the plane of sound. And with that plane of sound, when I pronounce a word, a mental picture of that thing is created in my mind. For the word tree, I have a picture, I know what tree is. For the word door, I know what door is, I have a picture. With the word chair, I know what a chair is, I have a picture of that chair in my mind. So that plane is plane of thought. And the way you speak the word, that is the plane of sound. So Saussure, he says that we can divide to the signifier and signified into two planes of plane of thought and plane of sound. Signified lies in plane of thought, mean like chair and stool. With chair and stool words, you have the proper pictures of these words in your mind. You know what is a picture and what is a chair and what is a stool. You know the difference as well. You cannot call, you do not say something is used to sit on is a chair, so even a stool is a chair. No, you have different words for every category because you know what these things are. But for example, this thing is very much clear if from your observation. The children, the little children, when they are growing up, when they know, when they learn a new word, for example, they think they are taught that something used to sit on is chair. So everything that they used to sit on, even a cushion, even a stool, anything they used to sit on, they would call it a chair. But with your knowledge of language, because they have the same picture in their mind of with this word chair, something to sit on. So similarly, the plane of thought is the actual images of the things that in your mind. And signifier lies in the plane of sound, the way you pronounce the word. You know there is a difference between chair, cheer, car, again charcoal. So char, these three words, they have different mean. Apparently they seems different, they seems very close to each other, but we know that they are very much different. They are not only spoken differently, but they are have different meanings as well. So this was more about signifier and signified. Now, one important thing that as we have discussed what signifier and signified is, and together they make a linguistic sign, but at the same time the Saussure presented the idea of mutability with respect to this sign. What is this idea of mutability? Is that the time changes the relationship between signifier and signified, and therefore the sign, because of the time factor, the relationship between signifier and signified gets changes, and when this relationship gets changes, because together they make a sign, so the sign meanings get changed. A mouse, animal, and the mouse with the computer. So the time, because of the advancement in knowledge, the word, a new thing has been introduced as a mouse. So for the word mouse, now you have two concepts, one linguistic sign, but two different concepts. For the word, in the plane of sound, the word is same, mouse. So signifier is same, but signified is different. In one for word signifier, mouse, one signified is the animal mouse, the picture of the animal mouse, and another signified is that mouse device used with computer. So one word mouse, but two concepts are there. So because of the advancement, because of the many reasons, this way the language, it keeps on changing, and the sign, the word, the linguistic signs, its meanings get changed, its meanings gets transformed because of the relationship gets changed, that is between signified and signifier. Now another important idea by Saussure is that linguistic signs have values in relation to other signs. The idea of words, meaning that is synonyms, can be related to it. that some words, they do not have meanings. I mean, some words are there, yes, they have the meanings as contained inside them. For example, I mean, for them in the word, the meaning of that word is already there inside that word. But in majority of the cases, the meanings of the words, they are derived from their relationship with the other words. The words just like them, like synonyms, or words opposite to them, like antonyms. From both synonyms and antonyms, that is lexical relationships, we can get the meaning. So linguistic science, they do not only contain meanings, but majority of the time they have meanings because of their relationship with the other linguistic science. The reason is that as there is no one-to-one relationship between signifier and signified, thus value of language is not determined by relationship between them, but by relationship between signs within the system of signification. So it is not the relationship of signifier and signified that gives the meaning to a sign. Rather, it is the relationship between signs that gives its meaning. For example, what is meant by morning? Morning, which is not evening. So the idea of morning comes from the word evening. From the idea of day comes from the word night. From the idea of dark comes from the word light. You know, what is light? Something that is not dark. And what is dark? Something that is not light. So this way you get their meanings either as opposite to each other, or mean something in relation to each other. In both way, with the help of synonyms and antonyms, you get the meanings of science. So the meanings of science emerges from their relationship with other science. Another important idea, that language without society exists artificially. Again, the Saussure, he gives importance to the idea of society to give meaning to the language. So language is all about, is linked with the community of speakers, and language cannot exist alone. If there are no speakers to speak a language, language cannot exist. So language always exists with relation to a certain society. And then what else is that when we talk about society, we cannot ignore time factor. Thus there are static and evolutionary linguistics. Static linguistics talk about language at a particular time, that is synchronic approach. And evolutionary linguistics, they talk about linguistics or language over history, a diachronic approach. So we need to talk about language in both ways. If we want to just talk about a language at a particular time, then that is object of static linguistics. But if we want to study language over a period of time, then that is concerned in evolutionary linguistics. Another important idea by Saussure, again according to language. Number 1, language is a system. Number 2, language is a system of science. Number 3, there is no one-to-one relationship between signifier and signified. Number 4, the meanings in language are determined by the relationships of signs from one sign to another, not because of the signified and signifier. So another important idea about language. Language is a system of differences. Each linguistic term derives its value from its opposition to all other terms. As I have already just mentioned, that we get the idea of light from the idea of darkness. For example, what is this color? This color is blue. Why this is blue? Because this is not red, because this is not orange, this is not white, this is not black, this is not purple. So this is blue. Okay, what is red color? Red color is something which is not brown, which is not pink, which is not green, which is not blue. So the idea is coming. Something is defined because it is something, because it is not something else. For example, the train picture is given, but let me explain this example. For example, consider that at a station, there is a system of trains. There are 3 trains. Number 1 train which leaves the station at 9 o'clock. Train number 2 which leaves the station at 10 o'clock. Now if somebody asks you what is train number 1, you can say the one which do not leave at 10, rather it leaves at 9. So you compare them, you can define them in comparison. So this way, similarly in a language we define things on the basis of their difference from other things. So this is another important idea by Saussure. And further, to explain this idea of difference, Saussure, for a linguistic sign, it is more precise characteristics is to be what the others are not. The same way that the red color is because it is not brown, it is not pink, it is not yellow. So the value of the importance of that linguistic sign is determined that what it is not. A train of 9 o'clock is what a train 10 o'clock is not, and a train at 10 o'clock of 10 o'clock is not what a train 9 o'clock is. So the things are defined the way they are different from each other. I am Ansa, Dr. Ansa. I am not a Huma, I am not Shazia, I am not Rabia. I mean any names I can take. So I am what I am, and my existence is I have the value because what I am not. I'm not the other person, I am what I am. So similarly in a language we get the value of a sign that it is, a thing is because it is what it is not. This idea is very important in structuralism regarding the concepts of binary oppositions and linearity of language. I mean, from this you can say that language has a linear structure, because the thing can be defined in a way that, okay, if I draw a line and I put certain words here and certain words here, there is a word chair. Chair is something which is not table. But at the same time, chair is something which is not a stool as well. In the same, if there is one category, chair, stool, different words are there, cushions. They are all things which are used to sit on. Draw a line on the other side, there are different furniture items like table, cupboard and bed, these things are there. Now the relationship, the word chair would be defined as, on this side, chair is what the things on the other side are not. Similarly, over here we can define chair. Chair is which is not stool, chair is not a cushion. So this way the language has a linear relationship, and at the same time it has a binary opposition as well. We have words and we have their opposites as well. Another important by Saussure is language is not a nomenclature. What is nomenclature? A naming word. So language is not something that provides its own names for category that exists outside language. Mean it only names the idea, the things which are there in a language. For example, with respect to my culture, I know what Mehndi is, what Barat is, what Walima is. And in my language these things are named. But in a Christian culture they do not have these words because they do not have these things. So language is not a nomenclature. Let's have a recap of the different ideas by Saussure. What he said about language, what are the fundamental things regarding the nature of language which are discussed in his book, A Course in General Linguistics. Number 1, language is different from speech, speaking and writing. As I mentioned, that language is not speech. Speech is a big system. Language is a part of that system, but at the same time language itself is a system. Language is a system of what? Language is a system of signs. Signs mean the words we have in different languages. And linguistic signs, they have values in relation to other signs. Mean a sign is composed of signifier plus signified. But the meaning of a sign does not emerge from relationship between signifier and signified. Rather, the meaning of sign we get from its relationship with other signs. Similarly, language without society exists artificially. We can have, for example, Esperanto. What is Esperanto? It is an artificial language. It was developed for certain communication purposes, but it was not a language related to any society. So its existence is only artificial. Only few people in the world, they know it, they use it. but only for different purposes, not for a communication or normal purpose, the way we use our language related to our own culture. So the languages, they are associated with the society. They get their value with relation to their society and cultures, and without the societies, they do not have any value. Then when we talk about society, we cannot ignore time factor. So we have static linguistics and evolutionary linguistics. That static linguistics that studies language at a particular point of time, like what kind of language was there used during the Shakespearean age. So that is static linguistics. But evolutionary linguistics that is concerned with linguistics over a period of time. What kind of language, how language is different from Shakespearean age to till now. So we can comparing the different forms these way. So this way, this is evolutionary linguistics, studying a language over a period of time. Then language is system of difference. Definitely a thing is defined in with respect to the other things which that things are not. Again, I gave you the example of these colors, that a red color is defined because a red color is something which is not blue, which is not purple, which is not pink. So this way, language is a system of difference. We get the meanings with respect to the differences of the words they have with each other. And then language is not a nomenclature, that is, that language is not a naming word. It is not used to name objects or categories. It is specific to every society, the way they name different things. Now, these all ideas of Saussure provided the foundation, build the foundation of the structuralism, school of thought in linguistics, the first school of thought in linguistics. Now this idea of structuralism was used in relation with literature as well, and over here an important name is of Jacques Derrida. He was the first one who used the theory of structuralism to study literature. And when structuralism, it defines literature, what does it say? According to this structuralism theory, text can be understood as a construct to be analyzed and explained significantly in terms of deep structure of a system itself. Means when you are analyzing a piece of text with respect to this structuralism, you have to see the text as a whole, this text as a structure. So means some drawbacks are there, we will discuss them later, but again it sees the text as a structure to be studied. Now Saussure's ideas, he laid the basis of structuralism, but his ideas, they got fame, they got popularity, and many linguists, they adopted these structuralist ideas, and you can say that they were the further people who belonged to this structuralism. Now in this regard, structuralism from Paris, it was taken to America. And the people who were in America and they adopted the Saussure's ideas of structuralism were known as, they established as a sub-school inside the structuralism as American structuralism. And the important names were of Bloomfield, Franz Boas, Edward Sapir, and Wolff. These were the people who were inspired by the ideas of Saussure, the structuralist theory, and they adopted it, they explained it, and they refer to it with respect to different ideas. But once again, no doubt, structuralism is a very important theory. Why? Because it laid the basis of modern linguistics. Very first time it talked about the language. It only talked about the language as a major viewpoint of linguistics, or as a major focus of linguistics. So we cannot deny its importance. But yes, there were certain flaws inside it. There are certain flaws which were later admitted by different linguists, different researchers, literary critics, that okay, that yes, we use it still. You know, if you the first school of thought, if you talk about linguistics, the very first school of thought that would be discussed in linguistics would be structuralism. The people, they still use it. The people that talk about it, different linguists, they are promoting this structuralism. But at the same time, there are certain negative points definitely with this idea of structuralism. Number one, according to Husserl, a famous philosopher, meaning is based on a shared system of signification. Then what about private experience to create meaning? This is something more important with respect to literature. In literature, we do not get the meanings what are there with respect to structure of a text, but we also interpret meanings. We also make our own meanings. What about those meanings mean according to structuralism? The structuralism is unable to take these private meanings into account. Then according to Heidegger, if individuals are more a product of the system than producers, then it creates a sense that we do not speak language, language speaks us. Again, because the Saussure major focus was on language as a system, and we use language as a system. So it is language which is more important, not us, because language is something which is more focused than the producers. This was a criticism by Heidegger. Then Chomsky, ideas are efficient for phonology and morphology because they have finite number of units, but not for syntax. But Chomsky, there are creative ideas, there are the syntax, there we have the creative sentences, we have the novel utterances, we have so many things related to the syntax. So the structuralism does not take into account that syntax and that this criticism of Chomsky actually laid the basis for his generative transformational grammar that we will discuss when we will study Chomsky. And another, that post-structuralism, they criticize structuralism as signifier and signified are not two things, but they are same as concepts, are no more than the words. According to them, we cannot say that inside a sign we have a signifier and a signified. Actually, with the sign, the both things are there. So there is no proper difference between these two things. And finally, meanings are contextual. We get the meanings from the text by looking at its structure. But at the same time, we look for the meanings of the text in relation to with its relationship to the context as well. So context-based meanings are also important when interpreting a text. So what about even when hearing? If you remember in pragmatics, I gave you an example of a dialogue that repeated. I have a son. The person A, I have a son. Person B. Well, it's okay. Person A, I have a pet dog. Person B. Oh, that's a problem. Now, from all these four dialects, what meanings you get? You would find it hard to get the meanings, because the meanings are in relation, the meanings are there with relation to the context. If I make the context clear, okay, this is a situation where the person B, A, he wants to take up an apartment on rent, and person B is the owner of that apartment. So these are the conversation. The person, the owner of the apartment, is okay with his son, but he does not like pet animals. So might be he is not willing to give his apartment on rent. So this way, the context is making the meaning clear. So this context is ignored in structuralism. That is a flaw in structuralism. So what we have done today, we started with history of linguistics, how the language was focused different from traditional approaches towards the study of languages. And the very first school of thought, structuralism, and the pioneer Ferdinand de Saussure and his contribution, his ideas with related to structuralism. And we also talked that how these ideas of Saussure inspired different linguists in America who laid basis for American structuralism. So that was all about Ferdinand de Saussure. See you next week. Till then, Allah Hafiz.